Overtime with Joe Parker provides a comprehensive look into high school sports in North Atlanta. Tune in each week for prep sports headlines and in-depth discussions with local players and coaches.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Overtime with Joe Parker. I'm joined here today by two very special guests. I love talking about, for instance, football and soccer, but also have a love for racing. So happy to have a return guest today, and that is Dylan Murry. Dylan, thanks so much for joining us.
No, thank you. I enjoyed being on the show before, and I'm looking forward to it this time, too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And this time we are joined by Dylan's dad, David. David, thank you for joining us.
I appreciate you guys having us here, and I've relegated myself now to Dylan's dad.
Yes.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, very good, very good. Well, Dylan, I want to start out with you. Just recently competed at the BMW Endurance Challenge at Daytona.
Yes.
Yeah. So, can you talk a little bit about that race? And I know it didn't end up necessarily the way you wanted it, but you could go over that for our listeners.
Yeah, well, so for those non-race fans out there, which you should be a race fan if you're not, they have this thing called the Roar before the 24. Those are the official IMSA test days at Daytona in the beginning of January, and then the race is at the end of January. So we went down to Daytona for the Roar at the beginning of January, and it's a new team for me, new car. We're with Riley Motorsports now in a Mercedes AMG. And Riley Motorsports, they have such a good reputation. They've won so many races and championships and had so many notorious drivers drive for them. And so there was a lot of pressure on me going in, like, man, we know this car is going to be fast. I have to make sure that I'm on my A game, my 100%. And so we went into the Roar, and we were fast at the Roar. We were consistently top 10 in practice out of a total of almost 50 cars. And then we went back for the race, and it was just a 2-day event for the race. They had the practice and qualifying on Thursday, and then the race was on Friday. And so it's like, okay, we really need to get our A game on for this. And going into the practice on Thursday, the first practice was rained out, so nobody really went out. And then the second practice, we went out, and then finally in the third practice, I went out. I did 3 or 4 laps, and then handed the car over to my co-driver. And in those 3 or 4 laps, I ended up setting the fastest lap time in practice. And so it was really big, really good relief for me. Like, man, yeah, this is going to be a good car. It's going to be a good season for us. And so my co-driver ended up qualifying 15th, which is really good for him. He's doing a great job this year. And then in the race, we were running really good. He kept the car in 15th, handed the car over to another co-driver, Jerome Bleekemolen. And he did really good, worked his way up to 3rd place, and then handed the car over to me. I kept it in 3rd place, and then about an hour from the end was when it really turned upside down. We ended up hitting a rock or a little tiny piece of debris coming out of the bus stop with an hour to go, and it punctured a hole, just a pin-sized hole in the oil cooler, and it's kind of really disappointing because we could have had a podium for sure with the Mercedes.
Mm-hmm. And obviously a frustrating end, from your perspective as a driver, is something like that where something just, outside of your control, is that a little more frustrating than, say, a mechanical failure?
So I've always been told there's A factors and there's B factors, and then the A times the B is the results. The A factors are the things that you can control, and the B factors are things that you cannot control. And both of those together correlate to your results. So really the only thing that people should care about, and not just in racing, just in general for anything, are the A factors. What have you given your 100%, your 110%, and your standards of excellence? Have you given that? And then the B factors are just everything else. We didn't have a good B factor at Daytona, but we had an excellent A factor. I had an excellent A factor. The team had an excellent A factor, and all of those A factors gave us a really high expectations for the rest of the year. It's a really big relief for all of us, not just me, but the whole team, the crew chief, the team owner. It really gave us a big relief knowing that our A factors are there. And so, going back to what you said, it is frustrating when the B factors aren't there. But if you look at it in a big perspective, the A factors are really what we care about, and that's what the average results will reflect on. And so we're really going to try to push hard for this year.
Yeah, and as you said, the A factors were definitely there. You guys were moving up. We're in a podium position. But looking back ahead at that, how was your transition to Riley Motorsports and going in, a new car from where we were last year, where you were in the Porsche, now you're in the Mercedes.
Yep.
Rear engine to front engine. What was that transition like for you?
Yeah, the Porsche was actually the first car that I ever drove where the engine was behind me. So that took a little while to get used to, because before that I did Legends cars, engines in the front, and then did some NASCAR, K&N racing and late models, and all of that, the engines in the front. So I was built up to the front engine racing, and now it's your engines in the back, and it's a little bit different handling wise. You have the weight in the rear, so it turns easier, but you have to watch. The rear will tend to get really loose if you don't catch it soon enough. But going back to the Mercedes with the engine in the front of the car, it was really not as big of a change as I expected. Now, yes, the Mercedes has a little bit more downforce than the Porsche, and so it was a little bit different to get used to on that aspect. But going to a front engine, really, it was like I'm back at home now.
Right. Well, David, from your perspective, you were driving with Dylan at the Endurance Challenge last year. What was it like for you being, in the pits this year, just as an observer?
I don't even get to sit in the pits. Actually, I have a pretty good job, though. I get to spot for them. So I'm up on top of the roof in the speedway. I can see the ocean from there, basically. So it's nice. And for me, it's so rewarding, working with Dylan for the past, for his whole life, but really racing for the last 12 years or so. And to watch him develop and, share my knowledge with him, and then to see him go out and execute. It's so rewarding. And then for this aspect, in sports car racing, you're going to have pro drivers drive with you occasionally at times, depending on where you're at. So if you drive with a factory, you're going to have other factory pro drivers. So going into the race, Jim Cox and Dylan are going to run the entire season together. They're co-drivers. And then we added Jerome Bleekemolen to the mix at Daytona because it's one of the two long races of the year where it's a 4-hour race. So to keep Dylan fresh, Jim started, did a fantastic job, got out of the car, and Jerome got in the car and did the next hour or so, which then gave the car to Dylan with 2 hours to go, half the race, but had a fresh start. And so, when you're driving with another pro driver, and this guy lives in Monaco and flies over for these races for every race. He's been doing it. I've known who he is for a long time. He's like a factory driver. He's as good as they get in the world. So now you have a direct correlation. Last year, we're driving the Porsche, and he and I are driving together, but I'm getting to be an old man now. So now all of a sudden, he's in with the state-of-the-art current world champions of as good as they get. That's a direct correlation to comparison for him. And that's where you're going to make your credentials or not. So the great thing is, okay, Dylan, here's where you're at. Every time you're in the car with someone like that, then you're under the microscope because it's the same exact car and you're just changing drivers. And when we went to the Roar that Dylan was alluding to earlier, he was actually a bit quicker than Jerome in his first outing. Then Jerome got going again, and they came back for the race, and they were, I think, within a tenth. And then Dylan went out and set the fastest lap of the session. So that gave him instant credibility with the entire field to say, oh, he's pretty good because he's as fast as Jerome. And the next session, he was faster than anybody on the track. So that gave him credibility with the entire field, the other people that are competitors who are going to hire him at some point, and then also with the factories and Bill Riley, who owns Riley Motorsports. So that was a huge shot in the arm. So yeah, the results weren't there for the race, but to see that sort of thing, knowing those are the things that are comparison that make or break your career within that industry, that was very rewarding to see. And so to watch him up top, give my spotting, clear and sort of things like that, it was very pleasing to watch. Mm-hmm. Very disappointing though when the oil cooler, the rock came from another car in front, hit the oil cooler, and the spring leak. He was talking on the radio, said, of course you don't know what's happening at the time. He said, I've got oil on my windshield, which there were cars directly in front of him. So you think, okay, they're losing oil. Then when he got in front, he passed those cars, nobody in front of him. He's, well, it's still got oil. I think it's me. So we had to pit, and that was the end of the day for us with 45 minutes to go. But in that place, he had moved from 10th up to 3rd. So we were pretty confident we had a for sure podium car finish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Dylan, I saw the video you posted. I think it was to Instagram yesterday when that moment actually happened. With the oil all over the windshield, and you're heading down into turn 1. Was it kind of a letdown at that moment, or?
Yeah, well, like my dad just said, it was. I didn't know it was me at first. Yeah. So I'm coming out of the bus stop. I have the BMW in front of me, and I start to see a little bit of oil spray on well, first I thought it was water because it was a mist. Oil is typically a more thick and brown type color, but it was a really light mist. And so I'm like, I thought it was water. So I tried to turn on my windshield wipers, which is not what you want to do with oil. And it actually turned out it was so much oil that the windshield wipers helped. And so I'm like, oh, great. This BMW is leaking oil all in front of me, and I got to get around this guy. So I got around him, and there was another Mercedes in front of him, and I was still behind the Mercedes. I'm like, well, maybe it's the Mercedes in front of him. And so after 2 or 3 laps riding behind him, I finally got around him, and it's still coming on my windshield. And I'm like, oh, no, it's me. I come on the radio, and then we get the low oil pressure bar, 2 bars on the dash, and I tell the team, and they're like, yeah, we got to come in. They looked at it. We pulled in, and at first they were talking about just refilling it up, and then they saw how much oil there was all over the car and the radiator and the oil cooler and everything. And like I said, it was just coming out of the bus stop, 1 lap, a tiny little rock came up and hit the oil cooler, and it's stuff like that happens that can end your day on a great run. But yeah, it was like, oh no, it's me.
Yeah, well, on a more positive note, though, as David said, you obviously showed the speed throughout the weekend. From your perspective, I know you've been co-driving with Jim Cox now,
Yep.
And to have a Bleak Mullen come in, were you guys kind of taking and giving from one another throughout the weekend as far as strategy or what you were seeing out there?
Right. And yeah, so Jim Cox and we raced together all last year in the Porsche. Great guy, really super nice guy. And so now we had Jerome drive with us in the 4-hour BMW Endurance Challenge. And it was really cool to be able to work with him because he has so much credibility. He's been racing Mercedes for so long. That was my first race in a Mercedes, and it's all the little things that I picked up learning from him of, he carries the brakes 10 feet longer than I do because we have in the cars, we have data and we can see exactly where we lift off the brake pedal and go back to the throttle and everything. And it was really, I feel very beneficial to me for the driving aspect and everything of learning the tiny little nuances that's different in a Mercedes versus a Porsche or a stock car. And so it really helped boost my progress in the Mercedes really quickly. And it was great to work with. He's a super nice guy. Jerome is awesome. He's super fast, and it was great to be able to work with him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And now, David, I know you were down there for your track days. I know when we had Dylan on the show last year, talked about that. For our listeners, can you kind of go over, the David Murry track days and kind of what people can expect from those?
Sure. We went to Daytona and went straight from there down to Sebring, which is just south of Orlando, about an hour or so, hour and a half. And we rent the track, and we have events that if you have your own track car, whether it could be a street car or a track car, but for our events, we require some experience ahead of time. So if you want to go out and do some other events like that, get some track time, get some experience, and then come run with our events, we have 7 hours of track time open each day. So you got 14 hours over 2 days to drive your car on the track. And we just rent the track. They come up and they register with us, and then they have a chance to go out anytime they want, as long as they want, as often as they want during that 7 hours per day. And I'm there as well. From my experience, even though those guys are experienced drivers, they're still not professional drivers. So it might be somebody that's a doctor, lawyer, or an investment banker that says, you know what, I got enough now, I'm going to go buy my Porsche. And they take that Porsche or Corvette or race car, whatever it is, bring it to our event, and they'll drive around. I'm there. Most of them have in-car videos or in-car data acquisition. So I'll look at that. If they don't, I've got a camera they can borrow. They can suction cup it to the windshield, drive around. Either way, they come back and bring me the video as much as they like, and I'll evaluate and review that video with them and say, oh, you could brake a little later here, you could turn here, you could do this, that, the other, and let them understand the physics of it, because in the order, it's safety first, and then fun, and then the speed's always a byproduct. And sometimes we get that backwards. That's the whole, you get the adrenaline rush, right? You go to a track, you go, and then you're hyperventilating, and people are going crazy, and you're like, no, it's not supposed to feel that way. And you well, why did I get into I got into driving because that's what I want, that feeling. Mm-hmm. But in reality, that's a warning that you're driving probably above your ability at the time. So we kind of give them the physics of it. A car can only go so fast through a corner. Doesn't matter who's driving, and if you can drive to that limit, no one can be faster than you. So we have to understand the physics of what that entails. It's not just I'm going to be braver and brake. Don't brake for a corner because then you're going to go off the track. So if we do that, give them the knowledge, then they're safer to go drive around, understanding the physics of a car, how it goes through a corner. They can go there and drive it, and then the more they practice those techniques and become more efficient at it and better at it, then all of a sudden, the faster they go. The lap times come down, and they're having a great time. But like I said, the speed's always a byproduct. So we do that at actually 11 events a year. So we do it twice at Sebring. We do it 3 times at Road Atlanta, and then 3 times at Virginia at VIR, fantastic racetrack and facility. And then we do it once at Road America, and we move around quite a bit once at Daytona. Mm-hmm. So it's a great place for those folks that are anywhere from somewhat experienced, maybe have half dozen or a dozen track day events under them in their experience now, all the way up to pros, using their race cars to get ready for a race.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, are these track days, is this kind of suited for, as you said, the amateurs or the maybe aspiring professionals, or both?
That's absolutely both. Like I said, when we have somebody else say, you've never done anything in your life before, then we're probably not the first stop. So you first go out to another track day event that is for novice drivers, and you might have an instructor ride with you, and you do anywhere from half a dozen of those to a dozen, and then, okay, now I'm proficient, I'm aware, I can drive on my own, and I can be comfortable in traffic. Then you're ready for our event, and that's the minimum experience we have for us. And then it goes all the way up to, like I said, pro drivers, wanting to test their pro race cars, and everywhere in between. Most of our guys are either they just do track events and just do track days. They love that, and they've got their Porsche or their whatever they've got, and they go out and drive these events, 10, 12 times a year, and we provide that access to them for that. Or it could be, somebody that's actually racing that's trying to get a little more track time to get their car set up and be ready to race at those events. We've got one coming up at the end of February where Dylan will actually drive, he's going to drive the Mercedes all year, but he's also racing a prototype all year. Mm-hmm. And so both of those teams are going to be there with their cars. He'll drive both of them, jumping back and forth. And then I'll actually drive the prototype there as well to get a little bit of seat time, because we're going to drive together, which is another highlight. We drove together last year in the Daytona race. We're going to drive the prototype together along with co-driver and car owner Mike Thompson at Mosport in Canada this year in August. So I'm looking forward to that. And I got a feeling I'm just going to try to hold up my end of the bargain so I don't slow down too much for Dylan to go out and close us.
Yeah, very good. And Dylan, another car for you, that prototype. Have you gotten some seat time and maybe kind of adjusted to that car?
I got 3 words for that car. That car is awesome. I guess that's 4 words. I got 4 words for that car. That car is awesome. It is. That's the first time I've ever driven a prototype. We let's rewind back to October. We went out and just bought the car owner just bought the car, and we went out to Road Atlanta, tested for 2 days straight, and we went out on. It was a Tuesday Wednesday event. On Tuesday morning, we went out. I went out first to shake down the car and everything, and because it's a brand new car. Mm-hmm. And I went out, did probably 3 laps, 4 laps, came back in because they did what's called an installation lap. You go out, drive around real slow, come back in, make sure there's no oil leaks or anything. Mm-hmm. So I did that, and then I went back out and did a couple more laps. And I came back in, got out of the car, and my dad can speak for that too.
Yeah, let me tell that part.
I was trying to hold back my smile so much, because you think about it, that car is just so amazing. I'll give you the specs on the car. It's 2,000 pounds. It's a carbon fiber chassis. It has 500 horsepower, a little over 500 horsepower, and it has 2,400 pounds of downforce. So you go around the corners, and if any of y'all have been to turn 1 at Road Atlanta, it's a super fast long corner, and it kind of dips down a little bit, so you get extra grip there. And we were pulling 2 G forces through that corner, and you go around, and I've never really driven a car like that before, so I didn't know what to expect. And it turns out I have to do neck exercises now because after 3 laps, you're cruising through the corner, and then you turn in, and it's like, oh, whoa, and then your neck just gives out and hits right against the side of the car. And yeah, it's an incredible car. I am really looking forward to racing that. We were supposed to do Daytona, and last minute my co-driver had to get eye surgery, so we weren't able to make that because the doctor said, yeah, I don't know if I would
Probably not
drive
a
a car
idea.
that fast yet. I would wait a couple weeks. So we didn't get to do Daytona, but we will be doing the rest of the season, and we'll be doing Mosport with my dad too. So I'm really looking forward to racing that. It's going to be a brand new experience for me. I've never raced a car with downforce. So if you get too close to the car in front of you, you'll lose a lot of your downforce. So then it's really difficult to pass in that series. You have to kind of pull offline and not be able to follow the person in front of you, or else you just won't have any downforce and there'll be no grip going through the corner. So it's really going to be fun. I'm really looking forward to it. That car is incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and David, it sounded like you could definitely see that
Well,
excitement.
I've driven a prototype back in '98 and so forth. I drove for a privateer here at the Raleigh and Scott, and then also, which was actually the same Bill Riley that he's raced the Mercedes for. They actually build their own cars, and I also drove for the Porsche factory at Le Mans and their prototype. So I knew what they were like, and I'd driven the 962 Porsches a bunch. And so when I couldn't wait for him to get out. So of course he did some laps, enough to really get experience in the car. And when he came in, he's trying to be cool, get out, and like, I'm trying to be professional. And I could just see through him, knowing him, I could see the smirk on his face he was trying to hold back. And I looked at him, I said, you kind of like that car, don't you? He goes, yeah! So it was, and I tell you, for me, as a dad in this industry, and there's no words to describe sharing that with someone that's your son, because it's a race car has slicks, and it's so much faster than a street car cornering ability. Let's just call that, not just power. That's a huge step. Then you stop and you think, okay, now we're going to take that to another level. We're going to jump in a prototype with all this downforce, and it's more of a difference between that and a race car than a race car and a street car. Mm-hmm. So unless you have someone in that industry, or there's no way you can't take somebody for a ride, or because it's so expensive, it's not very probable that you'll get a chance to do that. So how else would you share that? And now we can look at each other and know that experience and share it together. And there's something really special about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and obviously sounds very special. Admittedly didn't have that with my dad, but that's all good. But when Dylan was on the show last, we did talk about kind of him, getting into the racing scene and that interest, and from what he said, it sounded like it was very organic. There was no pressure from you. It was just a natural love he attained.
He's been around the racetrack since he was born. I mean, 6 months old, he was at this racetrack on my shoulders, and his feet came down to my chin. And internally myself, what do you picture? We all have that. What's my son going to be like if he's born and grows up? Well, he is exactly what I would have expected to be, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be the way it is, right? Mm-hmm. So as we got around the racetrack, we were watching go-kart racing. My wife was friends with somebody who raced go-kart. So we went and watched them on occasion. And then at the end of the day, every now and then, they'd say, hey, does Dylan want to drive? Do you want to? Yeah. So he go drive a little bit, and about 10 minutes. That's enough. We don't want to wear out our welcome. And then one night he's, of course, inside, I'm thinking, I want him really bad to want this because I want to share it with him, but it can't be my idea. It has to be his idea, 100%. So no matter what I was feeling inside, outwardly it couldn't be shown. So we were at a night race at a go-kart, and I may have told you this story in the last podcast, I don't know. But he looked at me and said, "Dad, I want to drive tonight. I want to drive." And I said, "Well, you can't tonight. This is for people who signed up for all year. That's just for." And he goes, "Well, I want to sign up all year." I said, "You do?" And outside I'm going, "Yeah, you do, huh? All right, let's see. Let's go home and do these chores. We'll see how bad you want it. No money, just got to do these chores." And so inside I'm going, "Yeah, I got it going now." So he goes back home and I'm trying. I can't do it. So for 6 months he's doing all this work and every now and then, quite often, it's, "When am I going to get a go-kart? When am I going to go kart?" And I said, "We'll see." I'm trying to hold back my enthusiasm because, again, it has to be his decision. So we finally, after about 6 months, okay, we'll get a go-kart. And so now we're going to make this big commitment financially and time and effort. So we do this. And, of course, at first, I'm taking care of the go-kart because he's too young to do that. He's only, 7 or 8 years old. And I want to make sure it's still fun for him. So we do. And then as we do it more and more, I start slowly giving him some responsibilities. Okay, well, help me clean the go-kart. Okay. And then we started off because I knew the value of having a relationship with all these different folks that we started using my email list, and he started writing race reports. We send those out. And it got to be, do that every race in years and kept going. And we got further into it. We gave him more responsibilities. Okay, now change this, change that. Let's change the engine. And so it grew, and his passion grew with it, which, you don't know. It's like, okay, if we start giving more work, is he going to get bored with this? And then I say, okay, don't forget to do your race report, but you have to, we get on the way home from the race. And he goes, I go, "You don't have to. It's okay." He goes, No, I will. Because he knew how valuable it was, but that's the necessary part of the work that goes into having the opportunity to drive. So he did that stuff. And then, of course, what's funny is when he started going to my races in IMSA years later, and even the stock car stuff, everybody, "Oh, Dylan, I know you," because they were getting his emails all along. And I think that really helped his awareness of him in the racing community. So it was, when he finally took that on, it was rewarding. And then he's 18 now, as we've gotten further down the road, his passion's only grown. And that makes me feel good. So he's got all the ingredients. He's got all but one. He's got the ingredients of the passion, the knowledge now, the talent. The only thing he doesn't have is the dollars to make it make sense. Because unlike this soccer ball on the table, the football or baseball, it takes, every time you throw a football, you just throw a football. Every time you drive a race car, it costs money. Mm-hmm. And that money has to come from somewhere. You can't get bitter about it. You just got, here's the parameters. And if I had a gazillion dollars, I can just write the check and pay for it. But if you don't, you've got to be creative, another way of doing that. And so that's where we're at this point. We don't have the dollars. We could do the go-karts and the legends, but that's it. After that, now we're figuring out how do we make this work. And so we're working with sponsors, we're working with team owners, with all these different things to create those opportunities. And to this point, I did that when I was trying to go and I didn't have anything. So I slept in my car and I go, "Can I drive your race car?" And they go, "Do you have any money?" I went, "No." They go, "No, I don't think so." So we still have that issue, but at the same time, we've got a lot of knowledge, and I've been in business for 40 years. So that helps quite a bit. But somebody's got to pay for it. Money's got to come from somewhere. And so you have to be creative and figure out how to do that. And obviously, if sponsorship is not just, let's just put a decal in the car and call it a day and give us a check. Those days are over. Now it's all business to business, and it's all social following. So
yeah, I'm going to jump in on that right now.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, like he said, social following is so big. So it's so big. And actually, I want everybody to either after this podcast is over or pause the podcast, follow me, now, and then come back to the podcast. Go to Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, Facebook at Dylan K. Murry. That's DYLAN KMURRY. No A in Murray. Dylan K. Murray. Go follow me on any social media that you want.
Those are the critical things. That's when you look at the sponsorship now. That's where all the interest is you've got to have that following. So as we build that, and between the two of us, we've got just a bit over 10,000. So we're starting, but we still need to grow it more. And so, yes, while you're listening to this podcast, you too can be an integral part of Dylan Murry Racing success. So, but yeah, so that's the whole point of how do we do this? How do we make this go forward? And, we get people ask all the time, well, how does my 19-year-old daughter race in IMSA and GTLM? Or I'm like, well, that's That's a major deal, major step. It can be done, but here's where you got to start. If you're starting at 19, when I started, I didn't drive on a racetrack till I was 24. By the time you're 24 now, you better have been down the road a ways because it's changed. And when I did it, no team owner wanted to put anybody in the car that was under 30 because they were kamikaze pilots and they're going to crash my car. Now, it's for two reasons. One, some people think, well, you got to be that young because you got to have that young be talent. But in reality, it's more, I think, a marketing issue because the folks are trying to reach millennials and his Generation Z, which he's in between, so he covers both of them, which is perfect. But those are the type of things. How do you reach those people? And today it's social media. I mean, do you remember the days? And maybe I'm sure you do, but like before we had internet, and it's you're gonna start buying all your stuff online. No, I want to go to the store and feel it, touch it. I can't buy stuff online. Well, how much? Almost everything you buy now is online. You just go there and click, and it's there tomorrow, the next day, whatever you want. So our world has changed dramatically. And even looking at print media, that's been a tough challenge because by the time it's in the print, it's you lose a little bit in time. So you've got to be careful about the content of what to put where and how do you make that work. And so obviously now the podcast, well, we put this on there and now you can go look at it. You have access to it anytime you want from anywhere you want. So there's a lot. That's the world is changing dramatically, and the way marketing is done is changing dramatically as well.
And with that, is it your hopes that also, racing for a team like Riley Motorsports in the BMW Endurance Challenge, prolific races with a prolific team like that will also help, boost the exposure?
Absolutely. I mean, if you run up front, I mean, it's and Riley Motorsports can help you run up front. They will make you run up front. They're just that good of a team, and yeah, like a team like that, there's running up front will get you a lot of TV coverage, a lot of coverage on the media. It really helps with everything, and it's so valuable to have a good effort team like Riley.
We consider like the whole goal and project is to build a social following so you have value. We use racing as that platform. Instead of thinking about we're going to use this to go racing, you're using racing to build that platform or to build that social following. And so it complements each other. And they have value to bring something to that to make it work for. We've got Jordan Taylor. I raced against his dad, Wayne Taylor Racing. And Jordan he wrote one of the races, I guess, Daytona. Jeff Gordon drove with him. So we got to know him. And then he became this Jeff Gordon biggest fan character. Well, he's got 30,000 followers now because that's what he does, trying to build that social following. And I'm not sure if he leverages that yet, but that's what your goal is, to build those followings. So you walk into to a sponsor or wherever and say, yeah, I've got 100,000 followers or 200,000 followers. You'll get their attention quickly because they know if you tweet something or if you post something on Instagram or Facebook, say, you know what, this product, you should go get this at your auto parts store. They're going to do it. And so you've got a captive audience that's not just an audience, but they're a loyal audience because they're following that person. That's where we're at, trying to do that now, and use the racing platform to build that network, build that following.
Yeah. Well, Dylan, as far as the future, I know you guys are both obviously going to be racing the prototype at Mosport, and you'll be with Riley this season. I know the intentions are also to get it into the NASCAR ranks as well. So, where do you see kind of this year going for you?
Yeah, this year it's going to be mostly sports car with the Mercedes and the prototype. And we're hoping to close a deal in NASCAR for one or two races in August. I can't really say which one yet, but that's another reason to go follow me. You'll be the first one to know about it if you follow me. But yeah, we're hoping to close the deal here in the next week or two, and hopefully do a couple more NASCAR races this year. But it's mostly going to be a sports car this year, and next year, who knows? We'll see where it goes next year.
What'd you say those social handles were?
At Dylan K. Murray.
Oh, okay. I just forgot. Thanks for reminding me. It's at Dylan K. Murray, right? Thanks.
Yeah. Well, we're hoping that perhaps this podcast and the video on YouTube will definitely bring some traffic, and obviously, wish you the best. We'll be cheering you on here this season. So I want to close out. Dylan, thank you so much for joining us.
No, thank you.
Once again. And David, thank you as well for joining us.
Well, thanks for having us, Joe. We really appreciate it and enjoyed this quite a bit. Looking forward to listening to it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everyone for listening and now watching. Be sure to follow the show on Twitter at Joe Parker GA, or follow me on Twitter at Joe Parker GA, and follow the show at OT with Joe Parker. And you by now already know the other handles you need to follow. Thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you for listening to Overtime with Joe Parker. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review the show, and follow all of Appen Media's sports coverage at northfulton.com.